Perfect. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and this has been probably a mix that I distinctly remember being in the military. And what's cool about this is that, again, remembering from boot camp, training events, officer candidate school, following commands, this has been something that has had a strong meaning to me. And I think it holds true in the business world. And as I continue to help folks in both their transition and enhancement of their careers, this has been something that I think, again, is something that we need to pay attention to because it's so easily misthought of, and it pays to be a winner. And again, you can see the description here. Let's jump right into, hold on one second. I feel like my situation here is, see if I can get that advanced. All right, hold on one second. Technology, right? There we go. I got the click going. So, like we do, we have our regular approach to this. We'll give the definition, and then we'll also tackle the concepts. And you can see that, there's a difference between winners and losers. I always feel like veterans have a better play and control in this. And then finally, I love giving folks takeaways based on conversations I've had. And then obviously the follow-up here is with Eagle Group members. And when you're talking and again, getting that further coaching or running through scenarios, I think that's always been the best because it really is tailor-made to your specific circumstance. And I do think you get a 360 on what you're able to go through. So here's the definition. This is I've been searching the web, and this is kind of the best one that I found. And the key things here, and again, you can read for yourself, is the fact that it's about being on the winning side. And I do think that there's key elements about what you can do within your control, but then also what you can do in the larger aspect of it. And I think that coming from the roots of the military, again, that being the foundation of my own career, but sharing that out with others, has always been that pivotal piece that, when things are going awry, when I feel like maybe I'm not progressing as fast as I can be, or when folks are sharing that with them, it's like, hey, I feel like my value is so much more, right? Then why is it? So the cool thing about this is the larger question at work here is what you're doing or the work that you're doing, helping you? So I just start out again with some clear differences here, winners versus losers. And again, you can look through this. It's pretty simple. I think every day and sometimes every meeting, we start distinguishing and we size up people and say whether or not they're going to be helpful or not. And over the course of time, that's our summation or really our vantage point of some folks. But inwards looking, right, we got to ask ourselves the same question is like, well, do we run into these pitfalls? Right. And again, some key things from the winning side, right, is always part of the answer. I think that's key, is that you're also putting in solutions, right? I do feel that you get a very big dose and taste of that with this group right here, right? They're always like, hey, yeah, you have a challenge, but what about this, right? It may be difficult, but it's always possible, right? And that's helped some folks overcome challenges that mentally maybe they couldn't do themselves, but it only took maybe a support group to be able to accomplish, right? And again, some of this is coming internally, again, from your own accomplishments, from your expertise, and really diving into your craft and having pride of work. But I think even more so as you read through this list on the loser side, and it's okay, safe space, right? When we talk about losers, we know who these people are. And they're infectious. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say they're cancerous within the organization. And I would stay as far away from these people insofar that unless you need their resources or their expertise, you really don't want to associate with these folks. And the problem that I run into is in the conversations is that these may not just be the folks that are lowest on the rung. These actually might be folks that are executives within the company. And again, I have a diagram showing later on, and we'll go into more contextual nature of this. But keep these items in mind because, again, some of these items, some of these concepts, some of these behaviors are shown, right? And the reason why I put these forward is that, one, if you notice them, right, that you stay away from the loser side, but then two, it's your brand image. And my final note on this slide is the fact that when we look at companies, so much is put on CEOs about what they do, how they handle themselves, and the stock price changes, Elon Musk, right, about how they perform, right, because they feel like the company is going to embody that personal brand. What people don't realize is that they're building their own personal brands, regardless of whether or not they feel like actively that they're petitioning for that or not. And that's a key piece that also plays in a theme that goes through the rest of the slide. So I'll hit on that a little bit more. Wanted to plant those introductory seeds. So the reason why I harp on these items is because these are items that you're in control. And this was a survey that I thought was pretty interesting during my research. Over 2,000 or 20,000 employees, the top 10 high performance competencies. And what I'm going to do is a little bit different, maybe more so in the previous veteran values, is that I'm actually going through some specific instances. Again, I've been asked this directly, say, hey, can you provide some specific examples, right? And, the questions I ask when folks are asking coaches is like, do you know if you're a high performer? And they go, well, yeah, I kind of feel that. It's like, well, how do you know? Have you talked to somebody? Is that your performance review? Is that your rating? It's not to be contentious, but when we think of this through our own lens, oftentimes it's through rose-colored glasses. We go, yeah, I can do that. Proactive, oh, I've got that. Learning agility, slam dunk, right? But what you have to take in context of is high performance for the company, for your team, your division, for the overall enterprise, right? And for that, you do need a good 360. You also need to understand what's important, not only to the team division, but the enterprise, but, leaders that are one or two levels higher above you. And that's where, again, I think the military experience comes into play. You look at, 3 levels up in the military. If something were to happen, your unit leader, your division leader, your regimental leader gets taken out, you may be in charge. And that's actually happened before, right? The next thing is now, were you once, prioritizing one of these items and now you don't, right? Meaning that you were focusing your skills or your learning or your technical savvy, but are you still doing that, right? And would others confirm if asked, right? Are you still the expert in blank, right? So the ability to prioritize, would everyone agree? Would organizational awareness, meaning that you know what's going on and folks are checking in with you and you're giving daily updates, you're the corridor. It's a good thing to know because you know your own landscape. At the same time, you're adding value to other folks because they may not be aware of cross-functional dependencies, asks, investments, right? Things that may affect them that no one asked before, right? It's not gossip if you're actually helping them avoid conflict, right? And proactivity is one that I always think is weird because the only way that you get proactivity is working with people and understanding their behaviors and what they're searching for. So again, I've spent a little bit more time on this slide, but I do think that these from a high performer competencies is a great checklist, right? And you should be checking off this checklist with others, not just yourself. Now, the reason why from things that you can control yourself to the team, this is what it contributes to, right? Talent, skills, leadership, power, empowerment, norms and standards, team, conflict, incentive and motivation. When you're able to control those items, and it's tough, right? When we add the team layer into it, sure, you can have your own expertise. Sure, you can control your own prioritization. But what if others are depending on you? But here's the thing that comes up most often in my conversations about when other folks aren't doing it, right? You're part of a team. And as a team, you all suffer the consequences, positive or negative, right? And some of the most frustrating conversations I've had with folks is the fact that on their team, they're dragging an anchor. They're literally dragging somebody that's going to do the bare minimum. They're taking resources, they're taking pay, they're taking bonuses, they're taking capacity, and they're perfectly fine with it, right? And to add it all on top of it, the individual that's looking to grow, that's looking to, create higher standards, higher performance, higher revenues, higher profitability, so that they can get bonuses, they can excel, they can get a promotion on the books. The fact is that they don't directly have that person reporting to them, right? I mean, that's really one of the most frustrating things in business today, right? Having to lead without authority. And, when we look at these different pieces, yes, the fact that you can't control, I think actually a lot of leaders, even though they'll say to you, hey, you got to motivate them, or hey, I wish you would, I really appreciate it if you could, help them see the goals and so forth. Again, if you take care of those items and start contributing to these items, that's always been the ticket. And the reason why I say that, there's a couple examples on this from a talent, skills, and work ethic. Again, if you're dragging an anchor, if you have the rest of the team standing up and only one person sitting down, it makes it very evident. What you don't want to have is everyone sitting down, right? And then saying, well, this one person's doing it, so I'm not going to put in any effort. No, you motivate the folks that you can, and you create a large gap. From power and empowerment, right? An example there is, hey, I've taken this person through, I've given them assignments, I've asked them for their input. They definitely have expertise. That's the reason why they're still within their role within the company, and you document it, right? Now, the flip side of that is when you do that to high performers and you elevate them, you reward them, you shine a light and give transparency to the work that they've been doing, they've been grueling at, they've been working weekends, holidays, and so forth. I tell you what, they're gonna jump through their seat and continue working very hard for you as a leader. But as they move on, if they're not continuing working with you or moving with the company, now you have an advocate and an ally within the enterprise, and that's always cool to see. And then conflict and communication. That's the last one I want to hit on. But the key that most folks don't realize is that as a leader, and most of us have gone through that, is the conflict is actually the easy part for the party that wants to get away with things, right? They just, if they create conflict, confusion, right, then everyone gets bogged down with that and they feel like they've gained some time, right? And the whole goal here is to identify the conflict. Listen, I mean, it may be packaged in a way that is not very positive, it's not very helpful, but annotate it, document it, record it, and if there is some validity to it, address it and take care of it. And then try to, again, work with that person to coach them on their communication. Not everyone is great at everything. And, one of two things will happen. Either they'll accept your coaching and they'll trust that you have their best interests at heart, or they'll just work themselves out of the role. And that's where, again, you highlight yourself as a winner, you build a winning team, and with those, you're positioning yourselves. So when you ask yourself, where do you stand on these items individually and as a team, it should shape and gain insights, right, to how you're doing it. But even more so, if you're talking to your manager, your executive, or to your leaders, right, you'll know exactly where you stand with them. And what will be the positive thing is you'll gain insights to changes, investments, and decisions that the company is making and happening. It'll actually put you in the seat of power. In fact, it'll actually get you the seat of the table, right? They'll ask your opinion about, hey, you really dealt with these difficult situations. What's your opinion on blank, right? I can't believe that you've got these 3 people to jump on board. How'd you do with it? Because we've got another task that's super hard, right? And then you become indispensable. Now, I know folks love metrics, and I continue to try to hound these out, right? So financial performance, high performers, right? People that win, usually a 20% growth rate year over year. And that's key, because growth means bonuses, means payouts, means new CapEx funding, means new projects, means new investments, right? And you can read more of that. Market share, I mean, you're just speaking the language of both shareholders and owners, right? And that's the success value. When you talk about rewarding, some folks are not motivated by money, but when you talk about what the accomplishments are, that isn't hidden. That becomes very self-evident. Customer satisfaction, when the rubber meets the road, and to be quite honest, if your customers are happy, that funnels into the other categories as well. And then leadership. Really the cool things here is that all these numbers are very powerful, impactful, and to be quite honest, if you wrote a resume to either move laterally or if you're looking for a promotion, right, within the company and you have to dust off your resume, which happens from time to time, right? You're like, oh my gosh, what do I need to write? These items write themselves. And that's where I go back to. It's like, again, when you're looking at your own personal brand, right, you want to have them fortified with numbers. You go back to that back sheet and they go, this is what I've done individually. This is where I impacted the team, and here's the metrics for it. And again, if you're always consistently looking at that, it tells a story. And it's not to say that you have to be grueling at this, but when questioned, or if the opportunity arises, right, you've already shown that, again, you're a winner. And the cool thing about this is that teams that win do tend to get rewarded very well. And what I'm talking about is compensation, autonomy, power, creative rights, and so forth. So now I did want to say, from a particular individual piece, which veterans, again, we're selfless in a lot of fronts, that there is an alignment corridor that HR looks at, but then also you need to be aware of as well. So, the often question that I ask folks when I'm engaging and say, where are you at? Right. And folks may be feeling like they're high performance, low pay. Right. And I go, well, that's not good, because really the direction you're going to be moving is from right to left, right, to get back in that alignment corridor. Or I think what was said earlier is that if you're willing to work for a lower rate and you provide high performance, the company is going to take that all day long. Right. So you need to have those conversations to show, and some folks think that that's politicking. It's not, right? And if you really figured this out, what you're trying to do is provide transparency. You want to be able to show the projects, the items that you've done, the deadlines you've been able to meet, right? And also for other folks on either your team or peers that you want to highlight their case where they may be introverts or they may not be able to articulate or communicate for themselves. And what that shows is that you're even a stronger candidate. Now, obviously, if you look at low performance, low pay, that's not where you want to be, right? You can hang out there, but those are the anchors. Low performance, high pay, that's not a good position to be in either, because again, you could get skylined when looking at what are you producing, and that's always the question, right? And I think everyone's trying to drive for high performance, high pay, so I won't go into that. One of the overlays that I have shared with folks is that you need to know where you're kind of at, right? And folks have asked me, it's like, well, Les, where am I at on this? You kind of know. And I hate to say it, but informally, you have discussions and you figure it out either through awarding or people getting promotions where you kind of sit in this in your lane. And I think that's where some of the angst is. It's like, hey, so-and-so has been here less time and they got promoted. Well, why? Right? What did they do? And you need to learn that. And again, e-group is a great group to resource. They get to answer those questions, but also the actions. Again, I go back to what did you do individually? What did you control? What did you manage? What did you reach your hand for? How did that impact others? Did you, change someone's position or behaviors? Because to be quite honest, that's a showstopper for most leaders. Like, how'd you do that? Right. And then the impacts, right? At that point, you could pretty much claim any of the metrics or any of the improvements after that point. So this really does have a personal piece that's tied to it. And I do go over this with folks as well. And this is Glassdoor. And I think that they have this built out pretty darn well, right? when you look at your value, one of the things is I see that folks have a blinder, right, to their own company. Hey, I gotta wait for this one. I didn't get it. They're inks. But you really need to be able to evaluate it on the full market, right? And this will do two things for you. It'll keep you happy and it'll keep you honest. It'll keep you happy because when you continue to build your strengths, your leadership, you use and leverage what the military has taught you in the business world, and then you assimilate and you embody and you really do great there, right? Now you can make a lot of money, be part of the winning team, winning group, winning company, right? But it also keeps you honest because again, in those quadrants, you can see how easily that if you make it to a certain level and you start surfing, that somebody else is working hard to get what you've had. And what I do like about this, and I'll point out a couple of things, is first, it gives you a range, right? But then also, as you look in Glassdoor, it also gives you other companies. So you can have that discussion and value. And I think a couple of folks actually have come back to me and said, hey, Les, I've used this to, go back internally to justify, but it's not unfounded. Other companies value this type of skill set, this type of leadership, this type of results, right? And to be able to articulate that in a manner that, again, leaders go, it's like, yeah, I think you're right. And it's not the fact that they weren't thinking about it, but you're doing it in a constructive way. And the takeaway there is the great example of, let's say I were doing it, right? And I go, for product managers, it looks like maybe I'm getting paid 135, but the range goes much higher. And what I've been able to produce in the last year of blank, blank, and blank have fulfilled the company's goals. As we're looking into the future, I'm all for it. I'll be able to jump in. I know that there's challenges. I know I'm not going to be able to tackle the whole thing, but as a contributing party to this, right, in my history of commitment and extraordinary performance, I do believe that blank is warranted as we grow. And whether or not that's, an introductory salary and bonus increase, or maybe it's compensation based on the results. But either way, now you're creating your own future. So with that, again, pays to be a winner. And the key takeaways here are the fact that you are in control of your destiny to a large extent. There's things that can hit you from the side. I understand that there's enterprise and even macroeconomic events that can hit you from the industry standpoint, but you really do have a lot in your control. And it's tough because there's mostly the people aspect of it that's pushing in the opposite direction. Hey, just hide out in the grass with everybody else, right? Or, hey, no one's asking for this, but understand the competition or somebody else out there, whether or not in your company or outside, is pushing the envelope. They know this, right? So use your military leadership and win the day. And always, I say, keep the discussion topics coming. We'll try to continue to develop items here at the Veteran Value, and you always have a support group here at Eagle Group.